Yeousch!
Hey, what's up everybody? Today we got a Vegas 11 render tutorial specifically for gamers. I have 3 different file formats we're going to be working with. This is an AVI from Fraps, an AVI from a BMI shuttle, and then an MP4 from a Hauppauge PVR. And we're going to go over the idiosyncrasies of each of those and tell you which is the best way to work with them in that context. So, first thing you want to do is go to Project Properties and go to New, and you're going to be setting up a new file. So what I typically like to do with 1280 height 720, and let me stop here for a second. This is for YouTube, and there's really no reason to do anything above 720 on YouTube, and it's just that people typically aren't going to be using it. You're not going to have a lot of people that are going to download stuff in 1080p, and that's just it's the way it is. So, field order, none progressive scan, pixel aspect ratio, 1.0 square. Frame rate, 59.940. This is double NTSC. It's basically 60 frames per second. Now, you don't need to do this if you're on console, because most console games don't record at 60 frames per second. I have a Fraps footage in here that was recorded at 60 frames per second, so that's why I have it set there. Be aware of what your game puts out. There's some console games that do run at 60 frames per second, but just make sure you're not wasting your time running at 60 if you don't need to. Pixel format, 32-bit floating point full range. That's what I use on there. 1.0 linear. Full resolution rendering quality, I leave it best. Your motion blur type is Gaussian. And I always leave this unchecked, this adjust source media to better match your project or render settings. I've never been seen a discernible difference in what I do, whether I use it or not, so I just leave it off. Now, audio, you can use stereo. Don't use 5.1 surround. It sounds good, but for the most part, your audience is going to be listening on computer speakers, and they're not going to have a full 5.1 setup. And that's generally speaking for most of the folks out there. There's going to be exceptions to that, but that's what it is. Sample rate, I leave at 48. Bit depth, 24. Resample stretch quality is best. And since I already have a file open, I'm just going to hit cancel here, and then that's going to be the end of that. So, the next thing that we want to take a look at is how you set up your screen. This is all a personal preference thing. My personal preference is I like a big preview window, I like my media over here, and I like a smaller timeline. I know other folks that have, you know, small windows, whatever they do. In Vegas 11, just like the previous Vegas instances, you're completely open to what you want to configure it as, which I like, and this is how I set it up. So you drop your media in here, and then you know, hit it. I also configure everything so that when I double click something, it opens it up in a timeline. That's something you can configure in your options, preferences, and it's all the way down here. Double click media to load files in trimmer instead of tracks. Now that's been an option for a long time, so those of you who are used to previous versions of Vegas will probably do that. It's been, I personally like it. I think that my workflow is a little better that way, but you know, it's definitely up to you how you want to run that stuff. So once you get your stuff trimmed out and your clips that you want to put in, now for the most part this tutorial is specifically guided for people who are not doing montages, people that are going to be doing commentaries, people that are just going to show gameplay clips, stuff like that. If you're going to be doing a montage, you're going to be doing all kinds of other tricks and transitions and you know, cool 3D work and whatever else you're going to add in there. So this really doesn't apply to you. This just applies mainly for everybody else who's not going to be doing that level of work. So that being said, a typical transition, what this does, if you look at this here and you watch the preview window, is it transitions between one into the other, and you can see how that just blended in and out there. So make sure, you know, when you go from scene to scene, that you just use those transitions. Now the way you do that is, once you got a trimmed file here, is you can just slide that in and make sure that you've got these these overlays here, and that'll overlay the screen on top of the next one. It just gives you a really, it's pretty clean transition. But you know, again, there's lots of transitions in here, and you can do all kinds of stuff with cool effects. And if you guys got new blue plugins and whatever else, I mean, I'm just talking about a very clean, simple, easy to use tutorial on this. So next thing you want to do, I want to specifically address the PVR. Now the PVR has some issues that the rest of them do not, that I've used anyways. Now the issue with the PVR is, and I'm going to see if I can expand this a little more. Now you see these really lame black lines up here and on the side. This is from the way the PVR records, or however it's done, but every single one that I've ever used has had it on there, and it's annoying. So there's a way to get rid of this, and I'm going to show you a quick way to do this. Is you go in here to your, let me back up for a second there. You go in over here to your track motion, click that. Now you come into your track motion, and in X, enter 2, in Y, enter 1. Now watch your sides up here. You see the black line? You see the black line? Just start going on width, and you're going to watch this side over here. Just keep going up a little bit. What you're doing is blowing it up. So you see the black line's gone now, and go up here to height, and the black line's gone. All you did was blow that up a little bit so that you're not seeing as much. You're not seeing those black lines, and so it gives you a much cleaner appearance than you would get normally. So you're not boxing it. Next thing to do, I just want to touch briefly on audio, because I see this so much on YouTube and it just drives me nuts. Check your audio levels. Put your audio on separate tracks first of all. So I got game audio up here, which is off because it was killed in another render, or actually, yeah. And then down here we have a decibel setting. Put your computer speakers at a normal level, and then adjust these so that it sounds normal. So it sounds like you would be listening to anybody else's commentary at a normal level. I think people fail to do this a lot, and they end up with super loud intros or insanely loud music playing in the background. And background music is background music, by the way. If I have to turn it up to hear your voice over when you're doing a commentary over your background, something's wrong. So just keep that in mind when you put the music on there, that if you have annoying music, or you have stuff that's loud, too loud, or too hard to hear, people are going to immediately leave your videos, and that's that. Here, and we're going to touch real briefly on a color corrector. Look, color correcting is a completely subjective thing, right? So your version of color correcting is going to be a lot different than what I like. I don't like the oversaturated stuff that most people do. But, you know, again, completely personal preference. I'm going to show you what I do for my commentaries. I'm going to throw that on there real quick. So, I can do it track wide. Personally, there's two different ways to do this, right? You can come in here to video effects, you can grab a color corrector, whatever it may be, and you can drag it onto an individual track. That's something that is completely up to you what you're going to do. Or you can just drag that on here to the whole track, and that's what I did here. So my track effects right here, I'm going to turn that back on. I just use the standard default Sony color corrector, which you can find right here, just the default. And I come over here, and these are the settings that I use. 1.4 for saturation, 1.0 for gamma, gain at 1.2, and offset at -0.8. Now, I'm going to click on a few of these scenes here, and you can see what this is going to do. You see right now, you can tell that it's hazy, and here we're going to get rid of that haze. We're going to bring out a little bit of that color, but it's not going to be so where it looks cartoony or you know, oversaturated. Now, look at a couple of the other scenes here. Now, these are going to have to be adjusted for every different type of level you're playing. This isn't going to work for everything, but this is typically like a middle of the road that I use, because I just want to bring that haze down, right? And you can see here I'm bringing a little bit of color out, and the haze is deadening. And the same thing here when I'm outside. It brightens everything up a little bit, and it gets rid of that haze. Now if you like the haze, then leave it there. I mean, that's definitely your preference. So again, this is a completely subjective thing that you're going to do. Now here's a biggie, and this is a thing that a lot of people don't do, that is a major thing when using Vegas. Right click on every clip that you have, go to properties, and take it off of Smart Resample and put it to Disable Resample. Big deal. That is going to get rid of a lot of the motion blur that you have, especially if you're playing on console. Same for every clip that you have. Before you render it out, Disable Resample. So we've covered all this. Now this is typically the whole setup I do. Now I want to show you something new, completely new to Vegas 11, which is going to be under Options, Preferences, and Video, and that is a GPU acceleration. I have another video completely going over this, but this is where you enable it, and basically what it does is it uses your GPU to do some of the rendering. So it's very advantageous for people who are right on the edge of you know, having a difficult time with rendering or having long render times. It does cut it down a bit in certain circumstances, and I won't get into it. You can watch the other video I did, but it is advantageous to you in some circumstances. So next thing we're going to do here is we're going to go to the actual render settings. Now we've got our clip, everything's ready to go. Now we're going to click here to render as. Now Vegas 11's got this huge set of files here of how to do it. I typically render, when I'm rendering on YouTube, a Windows Media Video 11 file. And so what I did is I created my own. So I clicked on whatever the highest one here, and then you go to Customize Template, and we'll show you how to change that name. I've got that as YouTube New. So you can come up here and rename this, and then click Save, and it'll save this template for future use. And that's what I recommend you do, because it'll instead of going through and remembering or writing down these settings every time, it's just going to remember their settings. So go over the settings real quick. Audio, I got it on CBR, Windows Media Audio 9.2 at 192 48 hertz or 48 kHz, stereo AV, and CBR for the attributes. Now video, the mode is going to be CBR, format is going to be Windows Media Video 9, and image size is going to be high definition 1280 by 720. Keep your aspect ratio at 1.0, again with the same frame rate we were discussing earlier. You always want all of these settings to match what you set up in the beginning in your project. That's super important. Next thing we got here is bit rate. Now I recommend you enter something custom in here. If you are on a Haupog PVR, put this at 13.5 million, or if you're recording at the highest level in the Haupog PVR, you want it to match your source. So since this is I primarily record with my BMI shuttle. This is about what I want to work with my BMI shuttle, but the Haupog needs to be at 13.5, and you can adjust your bit rate through your settings in your Haupog software. So make sure you do that there. And then that will be the end of this. Now, oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Project. Video rendering quality, you want it at best. Stereoscopic, just go ahead and leave that whatever it is for right now. And that is going to be the end of this tutorial on Vegas render settings. Feel free to leave comments down in the box or questions you may have, and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Again, I don't claim to be a super big expert at this, but this is what I use and how I've gotten by over the last couple of years that I've been doing this. And Vegas 11, definitely want to take advantage of some of the new features that it has. I definitely recommend that everybody upgrades to it. It's a great product. And I'm going to go ahead and throw that clip at the end of this video so you guys can see what it turned out as rendered. So anyways, thanks everybody for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.